This week on New to You, Weird, Fact or Fiction, Part 2, Barba Rossa. Hey everybody, welcome to another episode of the New to You Show. We're entering the second week of our Weird, Fact and Fiction. I am one of your hosts, John Holt, with me.
One of your other hosts, Keith Vincent.
And your other host, Julian Cage. And with us this week is...
your guest host, Matt Schwartz.
All right,
Welcome back, Matt.
So now you can't say this is your first podcast.
No, now it's my
your
second podcast.
one.
Broke the cherry.
You're an old hat. You're a veteran now.
Now you can handle John's pick.
Yeah.
Exactly.
So I teased my pick a little bit before. We'll just roll right into it.
Yeah,
right?
John, what's your pick today?
So my pick is a Japanese...
Well, our theme is strange fact or fiction, right?
Weird fact or fiction.
Weird fact or fiction. And we are also a recommendation podcast, right?
For the most part.
Yeah, don't we sometimes just try to say like, hey guys, these are things that we've discovered that maybe you might like, right? Isn't that kind of how it works?
You want to get a little wet and wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. Or maybe you might not like it, but you should try it anyway because it's kind of interesting, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
That's what we say.
Yeah.
Or at least listen us talk about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And try to decide if we ruined it for you or not. All right.
My money's on we did.
Hey Julie, what's up? Nadia, hey, what are you doing? Not so much. Want to come over and play Barbarossa? What's that? Each player is a commander in a fictitious World War II German army. You might like it. Why do you say that? How is it play like? It's a deck building game, and you're trying to build up your forces so you can capture Russian cities until someone eventually captures Moscow. I don't think that went so well the first time for us. Well, yeah, this is fictitious. It's an all-girl German anime army invading an anime Russia. I don't think reality applies here, but I think you'll like it. I think you'll be good at it. Why do you keep...
So I went ahead and picked a game. So I don't know. Well, actually, it's probably in print still because it was picked up by an American publishing company, believe, who's called ArcLight. They may also go by Japanime Games. That's something else I've realized. So there's quite a few names in play here. Kamikaze Games, Japanime Games, and ArcLight. So the artists for this game are all Japanese fan artists. So they do like a lot of anime, a lot of pinup style work. And the game is about... So it's the card art is all like sexy anime girls.
So well, hold on. Let's talk about what a deck building game is for us noobs.
Right. So deck building game is a card game where you have an array of options usually, and you are over the course of the game building your deck by choosing cards to add to it,
and combining cards and laying them out in certain ways.
Right. It's sort of like the combination of a draft with a standard card game, where in a draft, it's almost like if you're drafting, say, Magic, you're picking all your cards, then you're building a deck, then you're playing that deck against people. This is drafting live, where you may be affecting your opponents.
You can't build your deck ahead of time. It's luck of the draw.
Well, sort of. It's more that there are Dominion is the classic example of this, and Dominion was designed by a guy who actually kind of got his start making fan Magic sets. So he was
kidding.
Yeah, so he was making fan sets, and they were pretty. They were like popular, and they were using them in like semi-official.
So Dominion is to Magic what 50 Shades of Grey is to Twilight.
Yes.
Wow.
Okay.
So yes, and so Intrigue. So you're sort of like you're either like Intrigue or your team Seaside is sort of the two ways that you can go on Dominion versus like Edward and whatever the other guy is.
You know
Jacob.
what the other guy is.
Jacob.
Yeah. You went to that movie on your birthday. You know.
I made everybody go to that movie. That was my gift. It's the Schadenfreude.
Yes.
So in a deck building game, you'll have everyone has the same options from the get-go. That's sort of the thing. Everything is arrayed for you. So it's
the stacks are identical, maybe just arranged differently.
And
like
I guess
shuffled.
specifically this is in Dominion, and that's the sort of like that's the penultimate. That's sort of the one that there were other games maybe that had similar ideas, but that was the one that really broke it out and had many imitators and diverting games from that. But the idea is that you all have perfect information. Like everyone knows what's going on the table, what assets are available, and you all start with.
So you don't have like a deck. You don't have a hand.
You have a hand, but
Okay.
the variance in the beginning is pretty limited. So you'll have basically there are point cards that you can use to win the game later, and I think you start with 3 of those. And then you have coin cards that you use to purchase cards to put in your deck.
Hold on a second. Matt, is he doing this right?
He is doing it right.
Okay, good.
I mean, it's the same. You know, I mean, unlike like you said, unlike Magic, where you build your deck ahead of time, here everybody's gradually building their deck
As
at
they're
the same
playing.
time. So it's a little more reactive to watching what other people are doing. A little more strategic in a card by card building up. And like you said, you're all starting with the same. At the same.
Right.
So I just had to bring Matt into this because he's a
Yeah.
Dominion champion.
No, I'm not a Dominion champion.
I thought you were a Dominion champion.
No, I went to the Nationals and then crashed and burned. It was like the first one knocked out.
Hey, well, sounds pretty good to
But
me.
he's-
Sounds like you were a county champion if this were like...
State champion.
Okay, yeah, exactly.
If this were Glee, you had to get to regionals before you got to the Nationals.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
And anyway, he's still champion of his Dominion.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yes. Yes.
He could beat my ass at Dominion.
He just buys coins all the time.
Yes.
All the way
I don't know.
through.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
his strategy.
Yes. Exactly.
Yeah. So
So
the
sorry
idea
to
is that
derail you, Holt. I just
as you're playing through, you're watching other people and you're balancing
reacting to it.
like how you're building the engine of your deck, because you're basically every turn you're adding a new card to your deck to accomplish the eventual goal of getting more points than your opponent. That's the sort of end goal, and there's going to be a tipping point watching everyone else go where your deck is primed to start hitting that function hard and bring the game closer to it. Like it all sort of snowballs near the end. Everyone's engines have momentum and they're all pushing towards completion.
I can see how excited Keith is to start.
No,
playing
I'm
these.
listening. So how long does this completion take?
It depends on the player.
It depends on the
Stamina.
engine.
Yeah.
I mean, what, a half hour for most games?
No
Or-
joke.
Yeah, I'd
Oh,
say
that's
if
cool.
people know how to play like for a 45
You know the rules and
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
And
a
it's cool.
45-minute game is like a solid average, and that's if you have cards that slow the game down a little bit.
I mean, the whole reason these games exist is because to win at Magic, it ultimately was whoever had the most money and
Yeah,
go out and buy the most
yeah.
cards
Right.
won. So by
Yeah.
having these fixed sets,
Yeah.
puts everybody on even ground. So.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Then it's about strategy.
And it's surprisingly easy to learn. Like the first time, I basically learned while playing the first game, and after that, I totally got everything. And
Cool.
And
Yeah.
and with Dominion, it has you play with like 10 stacks of different cards, and each card does something different. And the base set comes with like almost 30 stacks
Yeah,
or
about
something.
that.
So right there, you just by mixing and matching those 30 into different sets of 10, those are all different games and they play completely different. Then you add any of the 8 expansions that most of them have another 30 sets of cards in them. You're getting into like
Tens of thousands
endless,
of combinations.
endless
Yeah.
combinations. Really, like you don't have enough time to play all the combinations. Because then they'll have new sets before you're done.
Yes, exactly.
But it's a great game. It's really fun.
Yeah.
So that's that's kind of the kind of like the average or like the standard for deck building games.
Yeah, it actually kind of is. Like it's one of the forerunners in the genre becoming really popular. And like again, there are probably examples of games that either use this or like either use this mechanic in some part or are this kind of game, but that just didn't have the same like cleanness and balance that Dominion brings. And then since then, there have been a lot of games that have like tried to do a version of this. Like there was one called Pathfinder, which was like an RPG kind of thing where you actually had a deck and everyone's cooperating against this deck of encounters, and you've kind of built and are building your characters versus this thing. So it's kind of a card game, adventure game with a deck building aspect. And there was one called Thunderstone, which was you're all kind of, not only are you now like playing to get resources, but you're building up your characters to go fight in the dungeon, and those monsters in the dungeon give you points and more resources in your engine kind of thing. And so everyone's working towards that. And there's
Is
another
engine like a term? That's a terminology. Is that just your term?
No, that's the term.
That is. Yeah,
I mean, it
okay.
basically is. I mean, that's the mechanic that you probably focus on to make your deck come
Gotcha.
together in a
Yeah.
way that lets you kill your opponents.
Right.
Gotcha.
So yeah, like in Dominion, you have limited actions and limited buys. You can only buy a card a turn. You can only do one thing a turn. And you get those two things when you start playing. So the new cards you buy might give you more buys, or they might give you more actions, or let you draw more cards. And so when you start combining those, like here's a card that lets me draw a new card and gives me 2 more actions. So I draw a new card, and this card gives me, I can draw 2 more cards and I get another action. I still got another action on the board. Like you're going through your deck and
then Uno, you win.
Yeah, Uno. Well, yeah, you get enough coins to buy the big high price items, and you hoping that when you stack that point in your deck, because every point goes in your deck again, but they don't have any abilities. You can't buy stuff with them. You can't use them against things. It's going to slow your engine down. So you're playing this balance of like, how ahead do I get, but how much does it slow down what I'm trying to do? So yeah, I'm trying.
So that is like a kind of a rundown of deck
the genre.
building. Yeah,
That's the
so
genre.
now what about this Barbarossa you're telling me about?
So Barbarossa
From
I'm trying to
Japan?
see.
What an odd word for a
Yeah.
for a game from Japan.
Well, so Barbarossa came out in 2010
Okay.
in Japan, right? And Dominion was like 2008, I think.
I think
right?
at least.
Yeah,
Yeah.
8 or 9.
Yeah.
It's that new. Dominion's that new. Gosh,
Mm-hmm.
I feel like it's been around a really long time. I guess that's 8 years now.
I mean, the
but-
board game like explosion from Settlers on, like the new Settlers was what, like mid 90s or something.
Settlers
Yeah,
on.
I
And
mean,
it's
I was
like-
certainly playing it by 90. I was playing it by 99, and I think a lot of people in America were by then.
So it was gaining legs, and I think like it started just like it was probably like 2005 before you really had like big board game stuff going. Like I think.
I mean, Carcassonne, Ticket to Ride. I mean, there's
Yeah.
a bunch of ones that crossed over pretty large.
So anyhow, 2010, Japanese company makes a deck building game called Barbarossa. The setting is you are German soldiers,
fictitious German soldiers.
fictitious German soldiers. You are Germany. You play various factions. Each player is a set of German generals.
German soldiers. I don't think they still had an army.
Well, you're
they don't have a standing army, right?
This is 1942.
Oh, maybe 1938 or 39.
I don't know, it's pretty early.
Yeah,
41
okay.
maybe.
All right. Oh, got it. They had an army then. I've heard about
They
it.
had quite an army.
Yeah.
So you're playing.
But this is a fictitious one.
Yeah.
And
so you're
you-
playing a
and you
fictitious
are-
general.
And the player plays as a German
You are
soldier.
playing as German generals, I guess.
Okay.
And you are gathering your all the cards are different troops of different kinds, like Panzer battalions and shock troops and all this stuff. So you're building.
Luftwaffe.
Sure.
Yeah,
Yeah.
okay.
So you're building your engine. You're building your crew of guys who you're going to the tweaks.
Are they
and-
guys?
Oh well, you're building your soldiers and troops, which are all depicted as like sexy anime ladies. So let's just get to the crux of it. The art on this game, the theme of this game is you are World War II Germany invading World War II Russia, and the name
Which is historically called
Right,
Operation Barbarossa.
right by the Germans,
Yes.
which is Redbeard, which is their campaign into Moscow, or their attempt. So you are playing these soldiers. You are basically trying to sack a city. That's your goal. So
Probably
there's-
St. Petersburg, I'd imagine.
Well, eventually you're trying to get to Moscow,
Hmm.
but St. Petersburg's in the mix. Don't worry about it.
Oh no, it's really in the mix in real life. Yeah.
So your goal is to get enough combat strength by recruiting these troops over time. So you have on your cards, there are cards that let you recruit, sort of buy cards off the stacks. And then there are cards that you can play out, which is a little different. They actually can be deployed on the board and exhausted like you would in Magic, like tapped. So there's a couple like other elements at play than you would have in Dominion. Because in Dominion, everything you have in hand is used or just discarded, like not discarded out of the game, but like put back in your deck for shuffling and possibly dealt out again. So it's put in a discard pile that is part of your running deck. So you never really you don't hold on to many things
At any given time.
At any given point. But in this game in Barbarossa,
Your
actually
hand can actually.
You can have deployed troops out that are outside your hand, but they're specifically there to attack the cities, and not as much to you can destroy them to help you build stuff, but for the most part, they're there for combat, and so it's a little bit of a different balance in that regard. And it plays smoothly, and it's a very good deck building game. It runs a little long because at the end of the day, your goal is to get to the bottom of the deck where Moscow is. There's also a little twist in that there's a side and counter deck that you flip over, and there will be different things like a troop that you have to like spend extra resources to power
Kind of
through.
an X factor against you.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and if you
in your own deck.
To even get the city, you have to defeat this encounter. If you defeat both, you get victory points, and that's what goes into your deck, and you can.
Those are your points, like in
for the game.
Dominion, yeah.
And so the goal is to sack more cities and get more points than your opponent, and eventually take Moscow, and that signals the game end. Like this is all fan, so it's Doshinjin or whatever, like Japanese fan artists. It went out of print pretty soon, like pretty early, probably like by 2013 it was out of print.
Oh, that's still a pretty good long run.
2012 or something, but it's not a huge run print in Japanese. They made an expansion called El Achamin, which is the German campaign in northern Africa.
Ethiopia.
Yeah, like northern Africa. So a lot of
right
tanks.
through Casablanca.
Yeah. There were 2 of those, and so this is about more of the first one, the more successful one.
So the but this one was re-released here in the States. Were the expansions re-released?
The expansion was so not just re-released, kickstarted.
But how can it be kickstarted if everything's like this game exists?
Well,
what do you need
the
to
idea is you need
raise
to
funds?
translate and print.
Well, they didn't mind having
license.
fan artists do the art. Why didn't they just have fan translators?
Because there's a
translate?
company who owns it in Japan, right? And in fact, you could buy this game in America and translate. People were printing their translations for it, but it got to the point where it was out of print. It was getting very expensive to get your hands on the game. Enough people were excited in it. 1, because I think the controversial art and subject matter, but 2, because it's a solid addition to the deck building game. And in fact,
but in that order, right? Controversy.
I know,
controversy
right?
first.
But the interesting thing is to the point where they also printed a historical art card version of this that has
so it's like real photos
grainy
of real
black and white photos
boy.
of tanks and soldiers, and it's very like History Channel though, like kind of off in the distance, filtery, like if you're
So it's like a less offensive variant.
Yeah, totally less offensive.
Okay.
But it's still offensive because you're trying, like best case scenario, you're Germany beating Russia, therefore winning World War II.
Yeah.
I mean that's what if Germany gets to Moscow in real life, World War II,
Also-
like we are speaking German.
Also, I feel like you haven't really painted a word picture of the controversial art.
Okay, so
yes.
But first, let me read this brief description
Is
of
this
the
from
game.
Cracked?
No, this is from Amazon.
Okay.
Barbarossa is set in a fictional Second World War setting in which cute German military girls rush against Moscow to defeat the evil magician Stalin.
Nice.
So that is the Amazon description. Now give us your description.
It's I have no. That's fine. It's fine.
I'm sure Zack Snyder plays this game all the time.
Yeah. Totally. I think that like honestly the art and subject is pretty.
Wait, when did Sucker Punch come out?
Exactly. Literally. That's exactly what it is.
Let's compare it to when
I'm
this
sure
card
Sucker
game
Punch
came
probably
out.
was like what, a year after, like 2014
I think
or
so,
something.
yeah.
I mean,
basically like it has all the anime like sexy girl tropes, like questionable age, like very like.
And so this is the
extremely
art on the card. So it'll be like Panzerschreck unit. And instead of there being like a representation of like a real German soldier, it's this cutesy anime version of like a girl in a tank with like scantily clad, and she's scantily clad.
Or
Yeah,
like-
highly stylized Nazi uniform.
and maybe not the tank, which would take away valuable room on the card
Right.
from
I mean,
her
that's more.
assets.
Yes.
That's like.
But yeah.
But unless she's like straddling the barrel,
Exactly,
or something.
yeah.
Or fondling a shell, like this piece of art.
Yes,
here.
yes.
But they're wearing, like, if they're wearing garters and a jacket, that's like a lot more clothing than some of their compatriots. Like, and they're often have like, again, if they aren't of questionable age, they have questionable proportions. Like it's all sorts of like, this is the kind of stuff that's.
It's like the internet, but images on a card game.
It's the kind of stuff where, like, if you came to a like, there are dudes who play Magic with sleeves that have this kind of art on it, and those are the people who are told to leave.
I have a question. So do you know anything, Holt, about?
Oh, in the back. By the way, there are no swastikas. But there are no lack of iron eagles. So there are iron crosses and iron eagles, and like the back of the cards are all iron crosses. So they've stripped away the worst icon, but it's not like they're still.
But it's unmistakable.
Yeah, you can't doubt it. Like there's a card called Little Führer, who's like, and it's like a little girl, in a pleated skirt and a black leather jacket.
So you said that this stuff is fan art. So did they just make like an open call? Like the game company? How does that work?
I think so. They just there are people who have a passion for making this stuff, and that's something.
And they went to like the version of like Deviant Art, but probably the Japanese version, and said, "Hey guys,
you just go to there are huge Comic-Con size independent comic conventions. It's kind of like our Mocha.
You say that like I should know about that.
Yeah,
How am I supposed to know?
Well, no. I'm explaining. You have we have Mocha here for us. Illustrator nerds go to this little indie comic thing. They have warehouse size. These are people who are self-publishing their own little comics, and they are often they're definitely sexy ones, and they're little family ones, and
right.
And they're
the
all
whole
kinds
strata
of tweaked out things. There were even fan-made animated series about funny Hitler kind of things. That's where the cultural disconnect starts to come in too. I'll get to that in a second a little bit, but
also, I mean, do you know why did they choose this theme? Is it irony?
I kind of feel like it's a shock. It's just that it's kind of like a shock value thing.
But so do you think it's ironic, or do you think it's
Who do you think the audience was?
I think the audience would for
originally, at least
4chan?
John Holt.
No, I think the idea is that the game makers knew that they had a good game, but they just instead of saying hey, let's make a broad base audience game, let's just double down these are sweaty otaku. They're going to like our sweaty otaku game, which is a slightly more complicated version of Dominion with some elegant tweaks to it. And they're going to play, it plays long. It's going to play an hour or so, or two, depending on how, if they play the full game through. Let's go no holds barred and just make it one. The theme is going to be you can see girls who are anthropomorphized aircraft carriers and jets as part of a Japanese subgenre of art, where you have girls who they have airplane wings attached to their legs and fuselages. It's this weird combination thing that they do, and so combining sexy girls and military equipment because there's also a Japanese concept of disgusting sexual horror kind of stuff, where it's intentionally supposed to elicit not shock, but it's supposed to elicit I don't know, an odd reaction in you. And so I think these kind of juxtapositions.
I don't know if you guys ever heard of the Lord of the Overfield. Is it
Legend of the Overfiend?
Yeah, is it like that? I don't know if you guys ever heard of it.
I've heard of Legend of the Overfiend.
So is that what you're talking about? Kind of like that?
I don't know. I mean, it's more it's more the illustrations of women who are in coitus with an octopus or something. That's a very specific, or lovers having sex and like cutting each other's tongues off at the same time, or kissing, like you know, sensually
morbid
defleshing someone or whatever.
But it's just shock. It's just like it's kind of like a shock value.
It's not though. It's not 100% shock. It's got this like other bend to it.
It's kind of a let's make you uncomfortable.
It's more like a kink.
Well, yeah. I think it's kind of like let's see you get uncomfortable, and that's kind of part of the thing.
Yeah, it's complicated. It's like a complicated thing where it's got a specific term. Like there's a name for this. Like, you know, like Germans have names for certain things like Schadenfreude. There's like a specific name for this sort of like weirdness with sexuality and horror. And it's not supposed to be like erotic, but it's also not supposed to be like scary and shocking. It's like supposed to fall in this other category. So the weird thing, like there are games where you play, like in terms of game controversies, there are games where you play Jack the Ripper. And that's pretty, like people get...
That's a great game though.
Yeah.
Yeah, but also Jack the Ripper happened like 100 years ago. This is something where people are still alive that lived through it.
I mean, this happened, 80 years ago?
So in 20 years, you're okay with this game?
No. In
200 years.
In 100, like no, like in.
I'm trying to get the date down of when
No.
the company is going to feel
There's
free
a
to
real.
reissue
There's a
this.
real. There's a real line. Like
Once something more horrible happens, then you know.
No. There's a real like. And there's even a term for this within like the history people where it's like something is far enough removed. Genghis Khan. You could have made this thing about Genghis Khan and nobody would have been upset, right? But you make this about a thing that has happened in some people's lifetime, and there's still you know.
Right. Yeah. I mean,
and I'm not saying that this game shouldn't have been made or any of that. I'm just saying like it's obvious to me that part of the reasoning is that they wanted to kind of make it kind of
I mean, it's a combination of the two, right?
Yeah.
I mean, basically, you have the anime manga culture of kind of this fetishistic kind of art, but on top of that, you're now also layering on a alternate reality history theme, which itself would have been controversial.
Right.
Yeah.
So I think the combo is kind of like a
It's just
cocktail
like,
that
we don't
makes
take
it,
anything serious.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah.
Exactly.
And
So-
also very weird. Like it's like you're like, wait, what? Like how did they even
like it's to the
put
point.
these two
it's
things
like
together?
to the point of absurdity.
Yeah.
And
No,
that's
I
where,
get it.
like that's where like there's two kind of issues. It's like with any sort of shock humor or something where if there's the people who understand this is shocking and like sensational, and when this person is talking making jokes about some terrible thing, like making really bad jokes, but you understand like where their gross or shock humor is coming from, and you're like, okay, yeah, I get that joke, but I don't espouse that behavior, right? I'm not like by laughing at this joke, I'm not saying that this is a proper way for people. They shouldn't be stealing or killing or raping or whatever. That's not proper. But then there's those people who aren't as enlightened who are also listening to that comic, and that's where it gets dangerous. It's like you make this sexy girl art thing. There are people who don't realize that the
That it's a
subject
goof.
matter is controversial, and they may not realize that the art is like not like it's just kind of wacky. Like it's like overdrawn and overdone.
Yeah, I feel like this whole thing also like echoes a lot of the weird internet subculture that's out there, like a lot of what you find on 4chan and a lot of that kind of stuff. And even like honestly, like this also reminds me of like Pepe, who's been in in the news a lot lately. It's kind of like I think that's maybe part of why it caught the popularity.
Well, and also, I mean, you can trivialize very serious situations, but usually when you do it for some kind of message, whether it's through satire or whether it's political. There are great artistic, movies or art or
Absolutely.
anything that their whole point is to do it. I think here the question is, it doesn't especially feel ironic,
no message.
ironic or political. It actually feels like it almost feels like a intentional tweaking, but not in a way that it has something to say, which I think is part of the problem. It just feels juvenile. I'll just say I think
definitely.
juvenile is where is the word I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And the perfect example is Springtime for Hitler, the producers.
Of course.
I mean that's an example of they're making fun of this, but that's kind of the joke, and this doesn't have that same kind of awareness.
And again, I mean, we talked about this too. I mean, the guys who did Cards Against Humanity, the hot new game is, Secret Hitler, which is basically just a mafia variation of it, where, if you kickstarted it, you got the special, like, limited edition Trump sticker that you could put over the Hitler and have, like, Secret Trump and stuff. So,
But have you played that one?
Yes.
Yeah, and I think it's actually
it's a really interesting.
It's like a good example of how, as even a very liberal-heavy government can do things and be influenced to enact policies that are giving them temporary power, but inevitably leading to down the road to fascism.
Absolutely. And also in that game, everyone's not competing to be Hitler. I mean, it's basically, you're taking sides and you're trying to figure out how.
Right, and
how
people
we
have been
decide to
randomly
work.
chosen to be Hitler.
Exactly.
And they're just trying to affect that goal that he would and play the best version of him, but everyone else is doing, it's just like playing werewolf or any of those games.
Exactly.
You're the villain, you've been cast as the villain,
Yeah.
play the villain. Everyone else is the good guys and they're hunting you. play your roles.
Right.
Versus in this game, like the direct link over here is you're all gung ho villains. go get Russia
with enormous breasts.
Yeah,
and who don't wear any clothing.
Yeah,
go for it.
So the sort of weird fact fiction is like this is someone's take on something that actually horrible things that happened, and this like this shaped the last century and still shapes our current century. Like it's shaping our new century. Some of these same fascistic ideas and the horrible black seeds at the heart of all these movements of Germany in
just the fact that the two superpowers coming out of World War II are America and Russia, or
right.
America and the Soviet Union. I mean, that's
right.
That has shaped our entire lives.
Right.
I'm not offended by it. I think it's I think I understand why they went this way. But do you think you said that this is a good game and on its own merits it's like a neat kind of take on like Dominion.
Yeah.
Would you say that it could stand on its own if it was just like Space Invasion or whatever, correct? Like if it was some fictitious,
you could reskin it, but it's sort of like
and they did, right?
Well, no, they put different art on it.
Yeah,
the skin is the flavor text and the
gotcha.
Yeah, you
the
could
backstory.
This could be. I mean, honestly, it could be a space parallel to. Like what are effective, like if these girls were in spacesuits with a different kind of fascistic symbol and they had space tanks and they were going after like a space Russia with like Russia themes, just that level, no, you know what I mean? Like 2 levels of removal, like sci-fiing it out and tweaking it, like it would.
But do you think that the game would have been discovered?
No, I think that really like
without that.
In fact, even the company that Japanime Games or whoever it is that prints it here, like the other game that they print that's another, like the first one that they had was Tanto Koro or Kore, which is another deck building game, and you're all maids, and you're trying to you play maids and you're trying to get affection and all this stuff. That's the game. And it's
are you trying to be a good maid and
sort of
light the fires when they're supposed to be lit and serve the food?
No, it's
or are
more,
you trying to woo the?
Yeah, I think so. Or it's more like you're trying to gain love points or whatever.
It's another manga trope.
Right. Yeah. Like maid game kind of stuff.
Although there's plenty of video games that play exactly in that same space as well.
Right.
So.
And so it's far more innocent, and the art is there's salacious art, but it's actually far less it's more made kind of stuff, and maybe the occasional like Oktoberfest style kind of that's the level. It's very minimal titillation.
Made from Clue.
Right. And it's another good deck builder, but again, what's the challenge for any of these is that the market for board games and for deck building games is pretty tight. There are a lot of games out there all the time, always new games. And when these were coming out, they were not the only hot deck building games on the market. And so I'm not in the heads of these guys, but again, if they're like, you know what,
Let's get ourselves on the map.
It may not sell for the game, it'll sell for the art.
Yeah.
And then enough people play the game because of the art, and it starts to gain a little more juice. We make a second one with more of the same art. It takes the game further, and again, you can throw new art on there. You could probably re-theme the whole thing, but it's easier to go and be like, here's sexy art that you can put on the same art on the Kickstarter and raise almost $100,000 to print a new run of this in English.
Don't get me started, Holt. Don't get me started.
Keith is a big Kickstarter guy.
Hey, so here's my question. Here's my question. Getting back to even yet more ethics that are not related to World War II. The fan art, do you think that these guys get some sort of licensing fee or something? Because honestly, that's
they might
one
get
of the
paid an exposure. Don't you think that's great?
Yeah. They get bragging rights.
I don't understand.
Honestly, I think they just get their names are on the art, and so people will go find them if
might have
they're
gotten a
real
free
fans
copy.
of that stuff.
Yeah.
Free copy of the game. And
I honestly find that to be more controversial than in the rest. That bothers me tremendously.
It was probably a buyout on the art. And it's kind of like you're a fan, you get paid a little bit of money to make this game, and you get exposure. Sure, like I mean that's the economy of manga and anime in Japan. You know, you're a fan until you're like directing shows. You're a fan, like you're a hobbyist basically, because you're living under your desk and subsisting. So you're doing it for fun.
Keith's offended on many levels.
Yeah, no. I'm honestly, I'm not being
No, I
prudish.
hear you.
I'm not being prudish on the art and all that stuff. I get it. I just think that the reasoning for it, like you said, it's a little juvenile and a little kind of.
It's like being offended by Benny
exploitative.
Hill, frankly.
Right.
I mean,
I think it's more like being offended by someone who wants to, I don't know, trying to be salacious or something.
But
yeah,
I think the other side is it's also
and not being put forward. Sorry, not playing on the merits of the game.
Well, I mean, it makes me question whether they felt the merits of the game were strong enough to warrant it. Because, I mean, the one nice thing about the game industry is there aren't many games that aren't great games that actually end up standing the test of time.
Yeah.
I mean, Kickstarter, there's so many games on Kickstarter that I personally have kickstarted that they undoubtedly make all their money from the Kickstarter, and then the game disappears because it sucks. You get it, and you're like, well, that was $100 of
this
crap.
goes in the dumpster.
So, yes, I hear you. I mean, so...
So wait. You've had some bad experiences with Kickstarter?
I have had some bad experience with Kickstarter. But I've had some good ones, too.
Oh,
Real
good.
ones.
A lot of great ones.
No, but sorry, I interrupted you, Holt. I just
So the other side is this is the other aspect of it, is that it's a different culture, and it's not. Some people will use that as like this is the excuse for why it's okay for this to exist. Like it's not okay for this to exist. Like without serious critique. You know what I mean?
Or without insight.
Right. Yeah. So like if you come at this with like, oh, that's real pretty.
Yeah.
Like that's
Nice.
like that's
I think the word is purdy.
Yeah, that's right. Sorry, I classed it up a little bit. But if you like, that's you can look at it from that perspective, but it's still not like it's not right. It's not great. This is not something you bring it out to play, and like I brought it to here because it's weird.
Yeah.
Like it's a weird thing,
and its very existence is kind of interesting.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's sort of like.
But the gameplay is fun, you said, and it's good. I
think the game's great. There are a whole lot of hurdles to get over to get to that, though. Like you got
right.
Like it's sort of like, I'm putting the goldfish in a baggie inside the tank for a couple days till they're comfortable before I let them out. Like we're gonna let everyone simmer in their juices before they get it. Basically people, you have to know your audience.
Yeah.
Like if you know you're gonna have people who are going to like laugh at the absurdity of it and the juvenilia of it, and then move past that and play the game, then that's your audience.
How often do you play it with people who have played it before?
I have probably only played this game like twice.
Okay.
And it's just hard to get it to the table.
Because there's always better games that you could bring out to the table.
I mean, there's always
Or
new
less
games
offensive.
too.
Right.
Right. Well, that's the thing. Yeah, it's like I'm going to teach this booby game to people. Like I'm going to have to work past the art and all this stuff to even maintain their interests and have them take it seriously for the game aspect of it. But so at the end of the day, where the tweak is, like, I don't think that I don't think the creators like have the same perspective on the iconography and the like, I don't know, like the how it is offensive. They have different things that they get just as offended about, and we don't have like
walking on the wrong side of the sidewalk.
Right, exactly. Or like honestly, I mean, I don't even know if it's a parallel, but like in the U.S. we had atomic bomb cafes and all kinds of stuff, and they had their own issues and their own sort of iconography that came up out of us dropping nuclear bombs on them, but it's a different kind of pathology. Like it's a different psychology that evolved out of that versus what we like. That's their monster. That's our like light bulb.
But let's be clear here. This is a version of it that was translated and printed for an American audience,
Right.
Yeah.
geared towards Americans. So
Right.
I think that's actually a little different
Right.
than the
Totally.
original audience, and then us picking apart. This was marketed towards us. This was
Yeah.
marketed
Right.
towards you and me.
Right.
I think that gives us a little more leeway to offer some feedback onto it, as opposed to me sticking my nose into a culture that I admittedly am not a part of.
Right, and that's totally valid, and you're right. And I think that's like it's because like it's almost sold on its absurdity and
Right.
sold on its controversy to a U.S. audience and sold on the like troll aspect of it. That sort of like it's tweaking sensibilities hard. I guess what I wanted to drill further into is like the making of this game and going into like Thai culture or these Eastern cultures where you have people who have fucking Nazi cafes, like World War II cafes, where
Right.
all the people dress like German soldiers and have German soldier cakes and just have this. There's a disconnect between like the same reasons we get offended at this and really need to like examine it is because we have a history with it, and there are people like we have a culturally diverse society versus like more homogenous cultures in Japan and Thailand, like on the mainlands in the Asiatic continent. Their cultures are less diverse, and they don't have people who were affected as heavily and had escaped to the U.S. to escape the horrors of this war.
Well, so the interesting thing historically is they were affected tremendously by World War II, obviously.
Right.
But not the Western Front, not the Nazis necessarily. You know what I mean? They didn't have any kind of experience with Nazis, so therefore to them it's just kind of like this. That happened over there. That's different. You know what I
Right.
mean? And I'm not generalizing. I'm not speaking firsthand, but I'm just assuming that has something to do with it.
Right, but
I'm
it
not
becomes-
speaking from any like.
Right.
I've been over there and they don't. I'm just saying that like it would make sense that's kind of why it's.
Right. But then you get, this like jackboot fetishism kind of thing where J-pop stars are dressing in black tight leather with the like Iron Eagle caps on and hosting parties. Like it's this weird like, it's like the same, we don't walk around in blackface in the US. You just, that's even brownface when someone does it in Australia or New Zealand for a TV show has us like pulling on our collars and being like, you just can't.
Is that a thing?
Yeah, that was like a big controversy. There was like,
Is it to make fun of like Aborigines?
I think there was something
Maori?
in that. See, I think there was something to that. Yeah, but it's this weird like, I don't know. It's so strange. Like maybe it's because.
Well, it's no one's job to judge other cultures, and that's not what we're not here to try to justify
Right,
or
there is a
pass
certain-
judgment on other cultures. People have to decide what their mores are themselves. Like every
Right.
culture has its
Right.
own mores, and that's not for us to decide. But to Matt's point, we're speaking about this as Americans, as it was marketed to us,
Right.
and I think that's a fair way to look
Right.
at it without diving into its origin before that point.
Right. Yeah. I guess what I was like, I'm seeing that's totally like, it's I think the appeal for it here is the fact that it's so taboo.
Yeah, and I think
Like, that's pretty,
There's
like-
there's an aspect of it that's absurd in a funny way.
Yeah,
and
but it's funny because like it's not like always
because of its
laugh
pure
out loud.
insensitivity.
Yeah, it's like funny and because this is like a bad idea. Like, it really is. Like it's not. Yeah, like so again.
I mean, by the way, especially when it comes to gamers, in some ways you can't win because you know this. Like there's a zillion board games that are strategy games that are based in history.
Yeah.
Where and there's all these fights on like the Board Game Geek and stuff about like if anything has to do that remotely like has touched upon slavery or nations that deal with that. Are these games that shouldn't exist? Are they games that should not call it what it is? Are there games that should call it what it is? How do you feel about a game where basically you're like slaves are basically currency in the game?
Like part and parcel would be Puerto Rico.
Exactly the
where
main
they-
a massive popular
fantastic game, and you have little brown circles that are your colonists. and you put them to work in the various factories to help you get your resources.
And they're your currency, effectively.
Right.
And and the game ends when one of the ways the game ends is when they all run out, when you can't get any more of them. So
they made they made the little thing brown, huh?
But not person shaped.
Right. Okay. Unless you're looking from above.
Oh, that's right. Very round.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's at the same time though, Puerto Rico is one of the if you're talking about like Settlers and Carcassonne, it's like
it's a
foundational
staple and
Euro game.
It's a staple, and it also is, unlike those other games, it has less than 1% luck. So it's closer to a multiplayer chess than anything else, in that there's almost no element of luck to it. So it is considered a staple.
Right.
But you do get those arguments. Now, again, I mean, as opposed to this game, Barbarossa, which, again, I feel is so jokey that there's almost no way to... The intent here
Take
to
it
me is clear.
Yeah.
But like I said, I mean, these games, that kind of thing haunts gaming constantly, where history plays into so many games over time.
And
I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
So.
And sexuality is another one. And like we're living in an age where people are getting more aware of how they depict people, and like as people become more like, salacious stuff gets put out there, and we become like more or less conservative in our views on sexuality and how people should be portrayed. And it's more, it becomes more about honest portrayal. And so there's all these discussions about that. And you have games.
So I'm thinking that the problem is that we keep getting more and more enlightened. So stuff that happened in history is offensive.
Yeah. Well,
so
maybe.
Come on. I think that we all know the solve of this.
Well, the problem, here's the
history.
thing, it's different
Donald
than
Trump,
it's different than something even than movies, TV, or music, because in games, they're unlike those other art forms, they're all meant to be fun. You're meant to enjoy them, which makes dealing with dark matters, taking enjoyment in that, a little different. And second of all, you're trying to win, which also has its unpleasant elements to it. So it is.
And you're also an active participant. I think rather than
exactly.
I
mean, you're in some ways
viewer.
you are role playing this stuff out. And I mean, if this is not a Civil War reenactment. I mean, if you you would probably not feel good about going to a con and engaging in a LARPing version of Barbarossa. I mean,
so
I would not.
So sort of to stretch that argument out a little bit. So there are a couple games specifically. Well, so generally there's the category of like war games where you're basically playing simulations where you're rolling dice.
Where historical accuracy is
like you're like basically we check the weather chart and it rains today, but because you made this one slight change and adjustment, the Germans actually did win this war in your game. And so in those, is it so strategic and so removed that it's less of an issue, or is it still like?
But you
the
have
fact
that in fiction. Like, I mean, Harry Turtledove does alternate reality all the time. Where I mean, look at The Man in the High Castle. I mean, again, I mean that.
Look at Inglourious Bastards.
I don't want to look at that. But I mean, I think I actually, weirdly enough, while I said the thing about games being fun, I actually could argue that serious war games that are reenactments are almost thought exercises more than they are games, in a way that I think is a little is like studying history,
right?
Which is why I don't play them, because I'm bored.
So then, what about a game like, say, Diplomacy, or even a Risk, where you or Axis and Allies, where someone is playing? I mean, in Axis and Allies, there are a couple players who are the Axis, or 3 players,
sure,
right? So there are definitely factions that are taking the quote wrong side of history in these games.
But in Risk, I mean, someone takes over the world. I mean, no one. I mean, yes, Kamchatka gets wiped off at some point where you're just like.
Everyone's safe in Madagascar.
Exactly. Or lock yourself in Australia because there's only one way in and no one can get you there. And so, but like, I mean, I think that's too simplistic to even care about it. But again, I mean, if
it's abstracted.
If your pieces in Risk were scantily clad women,
or if Risk had like, Iron Eagles and swastikas.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's a little
and used real terminology.
It's a little exactly. It's a little different. I mean, so I don't know. I don't really have the answer.
Well, I like the answer. It's complicated. I like it. It's nuanced.
One game I wanted to bring up was, in terms of sexuality, there's a game called Kingdom Death that is.
I don't know that.
It's a guy. He's actually a Brooklyn-based artist was a sculptor, like doing a lot of he was a big Warhammer guy. Started doing these sculptures and created this game for his sculptures, basically. And it's actually, you can play it solo, but it's like a colonization resource. It's like a 4X kind of game with a very like dystopic horror theme. And so you're like plopped down in this hell where the ground is just faces and you're naked and the resources are light. And so you're
some faces.
So you're carving around in this place, trying to find new people like who are just wandering in this wasteland and gathering resources to go fight these monsters. And these monsters are like penis monsters and like weird, womby, like beehive breasty ladies, like weird, like psychosexual horror.
Wow.
Sounds like that From Beyond.
Yeah, it's
Sounds
got a
like
lot
when
of
he
that.
crosses over into From Beyond.
But then it has like these. It's very much in that. It's sort of like a dystopic afterlife
Nice.
kind of thing. But the artwork is very like, yeah.
Well, I'm seeing it. Yeah, that's great.
But that's like the monster versions. Then they're like, the female characters, and he's added more male characters. Pretty much start off just like nude, because you're a nude thing pop down in here, and then you start to like build up your clothing or whatever. So a lot of the miniatures and a lot of the art are like well endowed males and females, and with like artistically enhanced proportions. And so that a lot lot
But do you like snap on clothes and
you
stuff?
can
like
actually do that, yeah.
like
or
they have the
sculpt it
parts where
on.
you-
I think
okay.
so, yeah.
Those cost extra.
Yeah. It's a very expensive game. They actually just ran a second round of Kickstarter on it.
Oh yeah, Kickstarter.
And they've made this game has made millions of dollars
in real life.
in real life.
Well, you gotta use Kickstarter then to
Yeah.
fund it. I mean,
I
how else
think
could
you can. I mean, to be fair too. I mean, I hate sounding like so PC about this stuff too, because like, I think there's ways to have fun with controversial stuff. I mean,
Yeah.
I was bullied horribly as a kid, and I'm traumatized by it. But I still think Lunch Money is, a great stupid
game's
beer and
great.
pretzels game which is a game effectively, which is, everyone's playing a little girl on a playground and they're all beating the shit out of each other, and it has actual realistic, horrifying photography of angry little kids. And it's like, it's actually something, but it's a great game. I mean,
Yeah.
it works as a stupid but great game, but the theme kind of fits. And again, if you can, if I can use it to laugh at my own personal trauma, then it's fine. I just think at least there the theme is more consistent, while here it's a little messy, to say the least.
What about that Civil War with Yetis game?
Oh,
Do you think that would offend anyone?
No, I think if you're talking about your scale of time,
Yeah.
that we're well past, was 140 years, 50 years.
Buddy, that war ain't over yet. But that game, I think, is talk about really fun art and stuff. What was it called? Like the North, the South, and the Yetis, or something like
I
that.
don't remember. Yeah, basically it was a almost Stratego style grid game, and you had your troops, and they had Yetis that you could deploy.
It was basically a Civil War strategy game, except also with Yetis
Cool.
that you could deploy.
And
Yetis makes everything better.
And either side could use the Yetis, and your Yetis could turn on you and destroy your own troops as well.
And
Yetis were sort
as
of
they're wont to
faction-
do,
yeah.
as we
And
know.
on the back of the cards, it had these like Ken Burns-esque Civil War letters back home,
Yeah.
and it would say, "It was the Yetis, Clementine, the Yetis. They came out of nowhere."
That's awesome. That sounds great.
It's actually a pretty fun game.
I'm sure Yetis are offended. But,
I'm offended for them.
Yeah,
Secretly offended.
So this game, if you want to get your hands on it,
It's on Amazon for $50.
it's on Amazon for $50.
But you'll sell it. You'll sell your copy for 40.
What, my Japanese copy or my English copy?
God. Ouch.
Anyway,
Yes.
it's on Amazon.
It's on Amazon.
It's
Probably,
on John's shelf.
Yeah, it is on my shelf. It's on probably like Cool Stuff Inc. and all those.
I'm sure it's on
board game
eBay all
sites.
over the place.
Sure, it's on eBay. The same company actually just made a game that I haven't gotten to the table yet. I'm really excited to play, called Manga, which is everyone is given from a stack of cards a couple themes, and they have to work those themes into a 2-panel comic, and then you go into the next
Sounds
round.
like this podcast.
I know. You go into the next round and you get another card with like more themes you have to fit in, and now you do a 3-panel comic. So you work yourself up to like 6 panels or something, 5 minutes at a time, and so it's just about like Jules is like, no.
It's like, wow, that sounds incredibly stressful.
That sounds like work.
So I want to produce that game for everybody.
There we
but,
go.
Keith's like, so you're writing comic strips, but you're not getting paid. Whoa. What am I missing here?
And then this freaking company's gonna publish them all, and
Yeah.
you make
Do a
all the
book.
money off. Yeah,
Exactly, the best comic strip.
But that one looks really good, and I picked it up. Just came out after its Kickstarter. Mangaka.
Oh, it was kickstarted.
It was, but
Okay.
there's not. I mean, really, it's like it's a stack of cards and a pad of paper.
Yeah, right.
So it's not. There's not a whole lot to it. It's more about like. It's one where I
So
like
it's
the
so
rules.
expensive to produce, they had to kickstart it.
Totally.
Because it's a
Yep.
stack of cards and a notebook.
Yeah.
Okay.
You got to understand, Keith, that your antiquated consumer models of like putting a product out there and letting it stand on its own merits. No. You have 30 days to decide the merit of this thing, and then it will get produced or not.
Got it.
And that's it. And its lifespan.
And it all depends on that wacky video you've made to make people interested. Yeah.
I mean, it's really just tightens everything down.
Yeah. Well, this is I'm glad you brought this to the table because it's an awesome conversation.
You love this
and,
card game.
And honestly, I would be curious for the two of you to play the game sometime too and come back with some more like I don't know, just some more commentary on the game itself. I'm kind of bummed we didn't get a chance to play it. We usually do. We usually have a night or an
get in and
afternoon
play.
where we get to play, and I'm kind of saddened that we didn't.
I mean, we should play more deck building games too. Like you should play Dominion.
Yeah.
I
think I'm the only one here that hasn't.
Yeah, it's a.
What do you know? Keith's the outcast again.
Like if we like playing that, and then almost any other game, any deck building game you play from that is a variation. So it's sort of like this is the one. If you had to teach a kid roll and move,
The one ring to rule them all.
Like you're kind of that's why you do your Candylands and your Chutes and Ladders is to teach kids the fundamentals, right? They gotta
Teach kids that life is entirely luck and there's no
Right.
ounce of skill in your success.
Exactly, and they gotta
exactly why you play
they gotta
Candyland
crawl
and Chutes and
before they
Ladders.
run.
And they don't even
Exactly.
get that Pop-O-Matic bubble.
It's like playing war with the
Yeah,
cards.
exactly. Well, eventually you get to play life
you
where you
jack
can like
shit.
you get the choices. Do you want to turn your kids in for some cash?
Exactly.
Those are the real choices.
Foster rancher.
Foster fighters.
I think
think you're
I'm
good?
very happy with this
All right.
discussion.
So,
I'm
Barba,
glad that no mores were pushed. We weren't, I don't think we were offensive at all.
No. I think this is a game where you will look at the art and decide whether or not this is a game that you could even try. Like, if your people play,
Well,
like,
what I think is if it's a fun enough game, you can kind of ignore the art. It's
Yeah.
really about the like what the cards represent anyway. Correct?
yeah, no. I mean, honestly, like, I wouldn't.
So you would play anything if the game was good enough?
Well, no. I mean, to me, the art on Magic isn't compelling enough to make me think that that's
Yeah, but see,
fun
I
to look at the cards.
I know compelling. But
Right,
I mean,
but
the art
I-
isn't
but-
controversial in any way.
And it's not that it's not the art that's the draw to the game. It's the gameplay. It's the,
Yeah,
and,
but
and
see-
isn't that kind of what most your games are reduced to very kind of like
I think the challenge
abstract things.
The
correct?
challenge is like with this game is that the art is the obstacle to the game. That's like the biggest. The theme in the art is really a hurdle to the game.
The game
So-
itself is the obstacle to playing this game.
Right. No, just the theme and the skin. Like the actual gameplay itself, the mechanics are something else.
Well, let's
So-
kickstart
No,
a
but-
fucking remake of this where it's like battles on Saturn or like
like which one?
Saturn
Which one of her
Wars.
breasts are Saturn is the question mark. So but what I'm trying to say is like I would only play this game with a group of people who I know well.
Yeah.
Because
who won't judge you?
well, yeah, that's one. But also like
we're judging you,
I've
but,
gone to like
yeah.
a bar and played Secret Hitler and had people who were like, there was the guy who was just like being too German about everything. Like, you know what I mean? Or like I've
Well,
played.
Keith, you almost did get through the podcast without being offensive.
Well, no. But too German in terms of him going like putting on a fake German accent.
Oh, I see.
And like almost Sig Heiling. Like,
Got it.
come
Yeah,
on.
but
He
but
was-
it
he was
must have been
hamming it
easy
up.
to win. It must have been easy to win because you knew that guy was
Exactly.
Hitler.
That's the dead
Well,
giveaway.
no, that's he's putting it on or whatever. But and then I played,
Not very secret.
but basically I always have issues with
Outspoken
I have
Hitler.
issues with pickup games a lot of times, and
Yeah.
you have to know your audience. Like we played Diplomacy at a Gen Con, and one of the dudes we're playing diplomacy with is covered in all the like runes and death's heads and spider tattoos, like all the classic like
iconography,
like white neo-Nazi tattooing.
Not that we're saying that everybody who has those tattoos is a white neo-Nazi.
Well, honestly, you start to
But they might have seen American History X.
Right, and really liked the main character and kind of not gotten it. Like they probably didn't get Fight Club. So
But anyway.
Yeah, so what I'm saying is that
maybe they just went through a phase, Keith.
Yeah, exactly.
And
We
now
know
they're very
we
nice.
went to school with some dudes who
Not
went
just-
through a phase.
Yeah. But not just the sort of like personal ridicule. It's also just knowing that my audience is mature enough, like the players I'm with are mature enough that like,
Or immature enough.
See, the immature makes it like kind of gross. Like if you're
Yes.
all on the same immaturity level, sure, fine. Like you can all go, yeah, babies, or you can go like, oh, boobies. Oh.
That's how we do
That's
it.
how we do it.
Yes.
Isn't it funny that these are represented by boobies?
What beautiful Amazonian Russians.
Don't you understand?
God.
It's camp. Don't you get it? It's camp.
It's something else entirely.
Anyway.
It's their culture.
Well, thanks for bringing it. Thanks for bringing it to.
So go buy Barbarossa from Japanime Games. Like, do it.
Yeah, or go to Holt's house and test it out first.
No, go to Keith's house. Felix and me are playing it.
But
All
thank
right.
you for bringing it, Holt.
Thanks for enjoying my fun. All
And
right.
if you buy it, use our Amazon affiliate link. I'll conclude it with this 5-star review. This game is so weird.
5 stars.
0 people found this review helpful.
I told you I would be victorious.
Where have you been? We have been looking for you.
Battling the forces of the evil wizard Stalin, of course. Why? What's up?
Oh, good. Then you're ready to do a battle again?
Of course I am.
You are heading to North Africa to help the Italians hold off the British. If the Allies open up a route through North Africa, they will be able to get at our vulnerable underbelly.
Alright, my tank battalions will be leading the expedition.
Good. Wait.
To such a question, there are many possible answers, such as hard work.
Years ago, the Holy
Feel I'm alone in this whole of
But anyway, what are we talking about next week?
Well,
I think we're going to talk about.
before we get into that,
Oh.
I was one of your hosts, John Holt.
Oh.
You can find me on Twitter at Lord Joho, and you can find me on Instagram at board_ghost.
You
And
can also find him at Barbarossa fan number 1.
True. Barba. I do not have a red beard, though, so don't confuse me with Barbarossa fan number 2.
Yeah.
He's a red beard fan.
I kind of have a red beard.
There
In
you
fact,
are.
I started a group called
gonna
the
start-
Red Bearded Gentlemen Society.
So if I start calling you Barbarossa all the time, is that okay?
Yeah. Willie Nelson was in a movie called Barbarossa where his character's name was Barbarossa.
I know, he played a scantily clad girl. He taped his eyes shut. He was sort of like he was reprising The Breakfast at Tiffany's.
Yep, Blue Eyes Crying in the Rain.
Blue eyes, crying, can't
But I've been
lose.
Keith Vincent, and you can see my stuff at keithvincent.com. Earthlingkeith.com. Maybe somebody might have keithvincent.com. Who
If
knows?
only your parents had gotten that for you.
And I'm Julian Cage. You can find me on Twitter or Instagram at BeautifulJules. And where can they find you, Matt?
You can look for me on Facebook. Just look for the Matt Schwartz, who lives in New York City, and most of his posts are about horror movies or
And occasionally about the leftovers.
or the Onion. So we're posting articles from the Onion.
Specifically the ones where it's the people commenting.
I love the American voices. That's right. Exactly.
All right, so we're going to continue our theme next week with Keith's pick. But before we get into that, Jules, what was new to you this week?
Oh, snap. I don't think I don't think I'm ready.
Called you out.
No, seriously, I'm not. I hadn't thought about it yet.
Pause.
Oh, I watched that show you guys recommended to me.
Which one?
It's
Good Place?
Yeah, The Good
Oh.
Place.
Talk about it.
I didn't really like it.
Aw.
Did you watch
So
the whole
good.
thing?
No.
Oh, that's the
I
problem.
watched, that's the problem.
I watched 2 episodes.
No.
Gotta keep going.
No, see, I don't buy into that.
I'm with
2
you.
episodes and I'm out.
I'm with
out.
you. I'm with you almost every time where I'm like, dude, if you got to watch the whole season for it to be good, but the payoff is pretty
I will say
freaking
every line in that show is written. It clearly was written in its entirety, and every line and every moment in that show is there for a reason.
Yeah.
And I almost
It's so
defy you to
deliberate.
just suck it up and go further.
Stick with it.
And see what you think.
Maybe.
Yeah.
There's so many other things.
As someone
to
who
watch,
barely
though.
watches TV, I was blown away with the writing and
The intention,
intelligence
yeah.
mixed with humor, which you never quite see.
But does it seems kind of dumb in the beginning, though, right?
I like the beginning, but I will say
it does build on itself.
I will say it
Absolutely.
builds. It is truly serialized in a way that is ballsy.
Right.
And can I just say, like, Ted Danson,
He's great.
everything
He's
he's
really
been
good.
in,
I love him.
he just is so good.
Yeah.
There's
He's good.
Even Saving Private Ryan, so good.
There are layers, Jules. you're just skating on the skin of the onion. my friend.
But it's like this game. I don't like the skin, you know.
You'll
Yeah.
get past it. That's peel away the skin, just like you do for all your victims, Jules.
A good place is the Barbarossa network TV, according to you. Got it. That's probably a blurb. That's not going to show up on Metacritic anytime soon.
5 stars.
Exactly.
Not a fair analogy. Not a fair analogy. It's fine. It's fine. I don't know why. I just didn't have a lot.
No. It's the first 2 episodes. Yeah, you got to get past those.
You definitely, yeah.
It's just something you haven't seen before
You
on
have
TV. and
you have
just for
simply
reasons
dipped. You have
alone.
dipped your toes.
Yeah.
That's it. You kind of.
Right.
It's something. There's
So
something.
now I gotta watch the whole thing, and then I'll
at
report
least
back.
at least 2 more episodes through.
No, you got to watch it to the end.
Yeah, that's true.
That's the whole thing.
I suspect actually, if you're really halfway through the season and you're hating it, then you
Well,
probably
I'm not-
drop out.
I'm
but
not hating
I would go
it.
further.
I wouldn't say I hate it.
I would say at least 4
I
or
was
5
just kind
episodes.
of like
is-
meh, you know. I'm just kinda
I
like
would
meh.
say go further.
Yeah.
You haven't gone far enough.
Go deeper.
Exactly.
Get to that good place.
Yeah, but I honestly though I do hate it when I'm like I don't like this show and someone's like, well, you got to keep watching it. So I agree with you, except that it does get better. Like each episode does get better, I think, and then the payoff. At the
And
end
honestly, you have 3 hours left.
Yeah.
of
to
the
live.
show. And that's with commercials
Yeah.
and taking bathroom breaks.
Yeah.
I think I've also been watching a lot less stuff in general, so I think I'm more picky about what I.
Plus, it
Good.
probably
Wow,
doesn't-
way to knock the taste level of your 3 co-hosts there. So,
Is it also?
Yeah, guys, I just stopped watching trash. Like you imbeciles.
I think I just have exactly. I have taste. So there's to it.
So, but I did hear it's not as good in VR as. So that's
Maybe
probably
that's
why.
it. Maybe that's it. I was like, it's all flat.
Yeah. All right. So what's up on deck next week?
Yeah, mine will be a mix of both fact and weird fiction, which is what I thought the theme was supposed to be, but clearly I misunderstood. So mine is a horror movie from 2012-13 called Toad Road.
All right. And I will argue that mine has a weird fact that this game was ever made.
Yes.
And the weird fiction of the fictional Germans
Yes,
and the
exactly.
fictional Russians.
I agree. Yes, yours does qualify as both.
It fits Holt.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it was or not and, right?
That's right.
Well, that's
That's
where I
why.
misunderstood.
Fact or fiction. Yeah.
And or.
Yeah.
Yeah.
All right. So, gang, you can find more about Toad Road,
Next
Barbarossa, all that stuff on our website, newtoyoushow.com. You can follow us on Twitter at newtoyoushow. You can leave us reviews on iTunes. Please do. Also, share the show with people.
Yeah.
It may not be new to you, but you know what? It might be new to them.
Yeah. Like your grandma, she's never heard this show.
Yeah.
Tell her about it.
Last
Oh,
week.
if she's alive. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to offend you.
NPR had
Yeah.
Tripod. We didn't do any of that stuff.
What is that?
Did you not hear about that? Hashtag Tripod was like get people to
Try the
try
pod.
podcasts. And so it was
terrible.
like, if someone doesn't listen to podcasts, make them listen.
Yeah.
Use the hashtag
Force them.
Tripod. Make your
Use a
uncle
confusing
download an Alex Jones podcast.
The voices are the best part of this. I'm very happy to witness this.
Yeah.
So maybe it's not new.
But maybe it's new to you.
Explosion sound.
May not be new,
Okay, sorry.
but maybe it's
Warm in here.
It's all about the music. This pitiful life is all about the music.
Be with him together forever, without the limitation of time ever again. So the second coming of the Lord is not dead. They're two separate entities.